without further ado, I'm going to bring up Will Clyden, CEO and founder of Ojai Energetics. Tom Hicks, Chief Growth Officer. And Alan George. Come on up. Have a seat, gentlemen. Does anybody have a problem hearing? Okay. So, thank you for being here. Game. How do you feel?
Great.
You anxious? No. Excited?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. These guys have history, the kind of history that not many men have, and not many men have this kind of history. And these guys have accomplished things that very few of us have accomplished. I certainly haven't accomplished what you have, Tom. Not you either, Alan. If I had to be a CFO, I would have already shot myself. And Will is a savant. He's been the brainchild behind Ojai Energetics and come up with some ideas and had the fortitude and the foresight both to bring the product under patent and the technology and the proprietary technology that is, and to secure patents on it. And he's aligned himself with these guys, and they are rock stars. So I think I'd like to start in the order that we're sitting here, Will. Maybe you could just give us a little history about yourself and what led you to Ojai.
So I've always been passionate about natural systems design, and patterns, and that led me to studying ecology, regenerative agriculture. Always knew that the cannabis plant was a very unique plant and that it had a multitude of purposes and utilities. Fast forward, I was looking for a CBD product, didn't want to get intoxicated back in 2013. Could not find one that met the quality QC standards that I would want to put into my body. Couldn't get a C of A on it. There's synthetics in it. And that was the impetus to start Ojai Energetics. Back then, most people hadn't heard of CBD. I met a chemist who figured out how to solubilize cannabinoids. And I grew up in Silicon Valley, went to Wilson Sonsini, which is the #1 IP firm globally in life sciences, and started looking at the intellectual property landscape of the cannabis plant. Back then, it was virtually untouched. And we subsequently decided to play long game and build in a portfolio for the cannabis plant and have one of the most robust IP portfolios, period, relating to cannabis.
Fabulous.
Yep.
Tom.
What led me to Will, or what am I doing here? Good question. So I'm a traditional consumer products guy. I started my career at Procter & Gamble, with very structured, very well, very training-oriented company, very disciplined. I like to tell people Procter & Gamble makes one decision a year. It's right, but they only make one decision a year, so which was a little bit boring. But Procter & Gamble, Frito-Lay, PepsiCo. In '97, I got kind of fed up with corporate America, and I was living in Chicago. I started my own company with another partner. It was called the Fantasia Fresh Juice Company, which is interesting because when you think about Odwalla and naked juice that were very prevalent on the West Coast, and there was an East Coast company called Fresh Samantha, but there was nothing in the Midwest. I mean, so
it was a brilliant idea to launch a juice company in Chicago.
Launch a juice company in Chicago where we're bringing in literally a tractor-trailer truckload of oranges every 36 hours, and it's 8 degrees outside. So people thought we were crazy because we built manufacturing everything in Chicago, but 2 employees started the company. In 3 years, we had 100 employees operating in 16 markets in the Midwest, and we sold that company. That was actually my first real entrepreneurial, hardest thing I've ever done in my life. Slept on my desk 7 days a week the first year. Pretty crazy, but wow, how much fun was that? Sold the company in 2000, late 2000, to North Castle Partners, a private equity firm that was buying juice companies at the time. Odwalla was trying to buy us, but we ended up going with North Castle, which had bought Naked Juice. They bought Ziegler's Apple Cider, Natalie's Orchid Island, about 12 or 13 juice companies in total, and they were executing a roll-up. I took my money off the table. I've been working 7 days a week. I realized, God, I got a wife and 2 kids at home. I should go see what they're doing. Took a few months off, and then North Castle called me up and said, hey, would you consider coming back to work? And I'm like, I'm in Chicago. No, not really. I want to do something else. And they said, no, we want you to go out west and take over the naked juice operation. I'm like, oh, well, okay. Never really worked in California, so it's March in Chicago. And I told my wife, I said, I'm going to go check this out. And I landed at John Wayne Airport, and when I walked outside, I called her and I said, pack the bags. I said, everything out here is green, it's beautiful, it's not 14 degrees. So along the way, I met, because Naked Juice was in a pretty bad shape, and we needed to turn it around and get it fixed, and that's where I met Alan George. So, and then Alan and I have done a couple other things together. Monster Energy. Alan took a little hiatus and went and played Green Beret. He actually served his country for 5 years as a member of Special Forces Group. And then when he got out, he came back and he said, okay, I need a job. So I got him out at Monster
I think somebody was
Energy.
ready to clap for that.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So, yeah, he and I have been together. He's a phenomenal finance guy. He's one of the guys when I go and say, I need to do this and this and this, and he said, okay, well, no, we can't do it. What's the ROI? So he's been a great partner for 20 years, and I think one of the most important things about building teams is establishing a level of trust. That's the base foundation for everything you do in any business and in any team that you build. And the thing about Alan is the trust is already there. So by having the trust, it gives us the ability to have really effective conflict. So we can argue. And we do a lot, but we argue knowing that our argument is about what's best for the company and what's best as we move this forward. So I called Alan after I'd spent a little time with Will. I've known Will for about 4 years, 3 or 4 years associated, and I called Alan up and I said, you need to look at this guy. You think he's got something. And I was running the third largest brokerage in the United States up in Boise, Idaho called Impact Group, and we just executed a roll-up and bought a bunch of brokerage companies. And I called Alan, and I was like, what'd you say? I don't want anything to do with that shit. It's all fake. It's snake oil. I don't believe in it. And I said, listen, you're my voice of reason. I want you to sit down and meet with Will. So then I'll give it to you from there.
Okay. So before we get to Will, so I started my career in investment banking in New York for JP Morgan, doing leverage finance. Did that for a number of years. Moved on into private equity at a consumer-focused fund in Connecticut called North Castle Partners. My first portfolio company, as Tom mentioned, was a company called Naked Juice. We executed a restructuring turnaround there where we took the business from $48 million in sales, 3 weeks away from bankruptcy, maybe 2 weeks away from bankruptcy. $48 million in sales. Now, it's a restructuring because, as Tom mentioned, North Castle put together a lot of disparate juice companies thinking that it's going to be a great platform. It didn't work in this situation. So we took a business, $48 million in revenue that probably started north of $100 million. $48 million in revenue, losing money, 3 weeks away from bankruptcy. Within 4 or 5 years, that business was $300 million, making a lot of money. Sold the business to Pepsi for a great return
and saved our investors a shit ton of money.
Yeah. So that was the first time Tom and I met. Worked together again off and on, as Tom had mentioned. We can get to the Will story now, which is interesting. Tom and I had been talking about what's the right way to get into the cannabis space. We saw the market, we saw the category, we saw what was happening. We're consumer guys, and we said, there's a huge opportunity here, but what's the right way to get after this? And this was about 18 months ago. Actually, more like 2 years ago when we started having this conversation. Being the guy that I am, I said, let me go figure it out. Spent time at trade shows, conferences. 6 months later, I came back to him and said, I want nothing to do with this space, quite frankly. And this was a couple years ago, right? So the market has evolved tremendously over the last couple years. He said, you got to meet Will. I said, man, I really don't want to get back into this space. He said, yeah, let's do it. You owe me that much. Said, fine, let's do a 30-minute coffee. 4 hours later with Will, just trying to understand his strategy and his passion was just pretty amazing. His knowledge, the first person that I'd met in the cannabis space who actually knew what they were talking about from a scientific perspective, and I said, okay, this is the guy that I need to get to know better. I need to understand more about what his philosophy is and his strategy is for cannabis in general.
And the fact that he had the wherewithal, literally when nobody was thinking about this, to file IP with the single best IP law firm in the world. And that was one of the things we looked. So Alan and I then we spent
hours on the phone with Wilson Sonsini, trying to pick apart the IP, trying to understand where the holes were. Thankfully, at the end of that multiple-hour session, we came out of that being like, okay, this is the real deal. The company's done it the right way. We like to say Will was playing chess when everybody else has been playing checkers in this space.
I think it'd be important to go into some of the detail about the patents themselves.
Sure. Will, do you want to jump into some of the patents here?
Yeah. So we built out multi-class families. We have over 61 patents filed to date. We've got 3 patents issued in those families. We built it as a parent and child model, enabling us to strategically have biotech and pending, and other ones we can class out into children effectively getting pending while still having enforcement capabilities. First patent complex we worked on was on the solubilization. We brought in a PhD from Princeton in microfluidic and nanoencapsulation. Built up that family suite in that stacked in numerous biotech disease claim sets and other composition as well as utility patents. So in that one parent, we've got hundreds of child patents to spin out. Of that parent class, we've got composition for blood levels as well as release profiles, ostensibly giving us, we are the gatekeepers to liquid encapsulation of cannabinoids.
Which means if you want to put it into a beverage, you have to use our technology.
Additionally, we figured out the antidote to THC intoxication. That patent's now issued. We can get a user completely sober in under 5 minutes. In our beta trials, we're anticipating 30 seconds. Actually tested it on one of LA County's cannabis enforcement officials, saw him up in Sacramento, and he said it worked very well, which we knew it did. And he was interested in mandating that for dispensaries to carry. Imagine everyone here has either directly had an experience or knows someone who's had an experience where they've eaten one too many edibles. They are perfectly safe, although they feel very unsafe, end up clogging our ERs. In this case, we can get someone completely sober very rapidly. Also have process patents and then MedTech plus 1 patent, so different disease sets as well as, for example, the combination of cannabinoids with opioids to lower potential for addiction as well as lower amount needed. That's one class of IP that we hold. And then all the way into industrial technologies. So back in 2014, I saw a BBC article of talking about an individual who figured out how to make graphene supercapacitors out of hemp and cannabis stalks. I said, this plant's ridiculous. Of course, you can make batteries out of it. You can make concrete out of it. And it's a very strange plant. So anyways, watched that and then years went by, nothing happened from it. I was paying attention to that art. It went public. It went from pending, published, called up Wilson Sonsini, and I said, hey, something's wrong with this. They brought in a PhD from Stanford, molecular battery engineering. He looked at it and said, oh, you're never going to take this past benchtop. Subsequently, know people who built it and know that that's the case. And I said, can you crack that code? He said, yes. So we figured out how to scale this technology. We also cross-checked to see if they had built utility patents. They had not, so we have it for jets, rockets, renewable energy ties, quantum computing, blockchain, or Bitcoin mining, any mining, cell phones, you name it, wearables for military applications. And then went to Lawrence Livermore Berkeley Labs. The national labs are one of the leading groups of Nobel laureates on the planet. They looked at our art and said, oh my goodness, this is going to work. So now we're in partnership with them. They believe in about 8 to 12 months, when we push go, we'll have full commercial scale of graphene supercapacitors that can actually vastly outcompete costs from fly ash, which is currently why supercapacitors are gated. It costs about $800 an ounce. We can do that at the fraction of that and actually scale it up. So we've got companies like BYD and other major companies interested in licensing. That's going to be just a part of our wheel and spoke model. We'll sub that out and not touch it. We're not here to run a battery company.
Right. Yeah, to be clear, we have a ton of IP, but we're focusing on the consumer products piece, which is CBD. All of these...
And cannabinoids.
Yeah, anti-cannabinoids. But all the rest of the IP that Will has filed, we are going to hire, project managers and people to manage that piece of the business and be able to sell the licensing fee. We are not battery... when's the last time you built a battery?
You're not very good
Okay,
at batteries.
but I'm a good consumer products guy, but I'm not a good battery guy. I'm not a good, THC antidote kind of guy. I'm not good with opioids. We're going to let somebody else do that. People that really know how to do it. The thing that's exciting to us is we own the IP that allows you to do that. And Wilson Sassini told us, Alan and I, with Will not there, they said, this guy's bought us so many freaking patents, there's a bunch we turned down. We only file what we can defend, and we feel like that Ojai Energetics possesses 80% of the cannabis plant in terms of the IP behind it. So not just with CBD, not just with THC, but with all of the other ancillary things that can come out of hemp waste.
And much of which there's no way that we could bring them to Bright. We'll run game analytics, pick out strategic grand slams, but majority of which we're going to be selling and doing acquisitions because the IP is so vast. Right. And our core focus right now is come into CPG and dominating that as well as ingredient supply for beverage.
And we got all this in the deck, but we're just kind of step up.
This is good. I think this is helpful. Would you agree?
Then I'll just very quickly talk about the consumer piece, because we're looking at this consumer piece in two ways. We have a licensing piece, which is we basically take our technology of our emulsion and we sell it to food and beverage companies that are trying to create a CBD beverage or a CBD food. The problem that a lot of these companies are having, again, I've been doing this for 30 plus years, and most of my time has been in the beverage business with Monster, with Naked Juice, with other companies, with Pepsi, blah, blah, blah. I actually did 17 months in prison at Coca-Cola, which is prison for an entrepreneur. But what I'm hearing from all my friends, what I've seen is that, first of all, CBD or THC, when you extract it, it's an oil. So have you ever mixed oil and water together? It doesn't work. So what Will was able to do with this microencapsulation process is created this water-soluble CBD that holds perfectly. There's some over there in that container, so that's oil and water mixed together, but it's not separating, and it never will. It perfectly homogenizes, it never separates, and because it's water soluble, and Will, you correct me if I'm wrong on the science, because it's water soluble, it bypasses the liver as it enters the body, so you get immediate onset and a much, much higher bioavailability. Yep. That's our technology. Nobody else has that.
And patented.
And it's patented. That's the key.
Composition
Multiple.
and utility.
So here's who we're working with. I mean, if you saw some of the people that I've worked with, we're working with right now, we have 16 different beverage companies that are under R&D. One beverage company that has launched, and quite honestly, their CBD line, they ran 200,000 units on their first run, and they sold out in 36 hours. And that's called LifeAid. They're out there in the marketplace. We have with a multi-billion-dollar public beverage company. They've already developed 10 items. They have them sitting on the shelf waiting on FDA to push it out. But packaging's done, and it's beautiful, by the way. The formulations are done. UPC codes are ready. They have a distribution network, and the president of that company, when we were sitting with him, he told us, he said, Tom, let me do the heavy lifting for you. I have a network. I mean, this company launched a brand back last March to compete against another brand in the beverage space. That brand will do $600 million in 12 months. That's the strength of their distribution network. They can get it out in literally 500,000 points of distribution in just a few weeks.
And these are relationships you've had too now for 20 years.
Correct.
Yeah.
But here's what's more important though, Brian, and this is what I love about it. Is our stuff works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, but this beverage company said, I mean, they're looking, because quite honestly, we're not the cheapest. We're the most expensive.
Let me interject something if I could. So much of what the team is sharing with you is protected under NDA. So they're being discreet about who the particular parties are. I can say that I am also under NDA, and in Wrazel's vetting and diligence have had purview to some of the joint venture parties, and it's exciting stuff. These are big companies who are crushing it in their space. Think the world of these guys and their product. I think you're seeing now firsthand why I was so excited to get them here tonight. They are building something that is going to be a very dynamic company and brand.
Yeah.
So go ahead, I'm sorry.
Well, I think the interesting thing there is if you're a very large public company, or quite frankly, even if you're a small startup beverage company, you're not going to go with the first supplier. You shouldn't go with the first supplier you meet with. You're going to do your diligence. And so this very large multi-billion-dollar company, when we met with them, said, yeah, we tried your stuff. It's great. We're also going to see what else is out there. And we said, you're going to come back to us. We know you're going to come back to us. They came back to us about 4 months later and said, that was just the worst journey we've ever been through. We evaluated 30 to 40 different suppliers. Your IP notwithstanding, because we kind of figured we were going to have to come back to you anyway.
This one isn't under NDA too. This is Sujet. This is a smaller one. But
Yeah. I mean, they basically came back and said it was just such a painful journey for us.
Well, they said they ended up with people from the cartel showing up at their door.
They
trying
did.
to sell stuff,
They
so.
did. They did. This was a couple years ago, but vetting 30, 40 different ingredient suppliers and landing on us because forget about the IP for a second. The stuff actually works. It doesn't separate. You get an effective dose, and you feel it.
Doesn't stick to
You
the side
feel
of the
it
can.
immediately, and you get no issues with the liners of the can. So
The technology, right? So as I mentioned, high bioavailability, immediate uptake. So that's with CBD. Well, what would that mean? What does that mean for THC? I mean, when you talk to some of the alcohol companies, you talk to Miller Coors, you talk to Anheuser-Busch, alcohol sales are heading south. What saved a lot of these companies this past year, I mean, literally today, Boston Beer had their earnings call, and what saved them is the seltzers. The lighter beverages, the lighter alcohol, the lower caloric alcoholic beverages, because even craft beer is taking a dive. So they're looking for what's next. And the younger generation is going, why am I going to drink alcohol? It's going to screw up my liver. It's going to give me a headache in the morning. I'm going to be dehydrated. Whereas I can still have that momentarily escape from reality if I just take a little THC. The challenge is you can drink 5 or 6 THC beverages before you feel the first one, which creates the issue. With our product, you drink it, 1 sip, 2 sips, and it hits and tastes, it feels like a beer. So if you drink one with the right amount of THC in it, it feels like a beer. So we have also...
0.3, for those who
Very
know,
small amount.
0.3 milligrams of THC the user feels in about 30 seconds and matches the same arc as if they vaporized it or as a beer.
And we know this is coming, right? So we also have signed, and we have, I think it's in our data room actually, we have a signed letter from one of the largest beer companies in America where we're going to be doing a joint venture that's actually scheduled to start the build out in about 2 months. We're doing a joint venture with this large beer company in Canada to R&D and develop a THC beverage. So Canada's about the size of California, right? So we're doing a joint venture with this beer company, with us, and with a licensed producer in Canada that we're going to build out a space within this licensed producer's property. They're going to put in a beverage line. We're going to put in our product to be able to make the emulsion on site, and we're going to R&D and develop a rock star THC beverage. So when the United States rolls out, we're going to be the only ones ready to go. Now, if you do any of your research around it, you'll find out Coors is struggling. Anheuser-Busch is struggling, and they'll tell you the reason the Cannabis 2.0 has not launched with beverages in Canada, they can't get it to not stick to the can because you're mixing oil with it. You can't do it unless you're using our technology.
Encapsulation
They don't know what they're
technologies
doing.
Doesn't work.
are a lot weaker.
So our beer company actually, they texted us today and said, we are so excited to get going. So now we're putting together, we actually owe them strawman elements of a joint venture tomorrow. Yeah, Friday. Yeah. So I mean, this covers the kind of the things we just talked about in terms of the IP. So our IP covers all of this stuff. On the consumer side, that's what we're really focusing on. But we have IP around med tech, energy storage, and many others.
Yeah, and as we touched on earlier, we've got the portfolio. Primary focus is ingredient supply, being the gatekeepers for liquid formulations. That's an engine room. and simultaneously CPG dominate best in class. These guys have built CPG, consumer packaged good brands that win. They've done it time and time again. We're going to flip the switch and be everywhere overnight, running a full program, but core focus is consumer. And then the other side, it's wheel and spoke model. We'll be subbing those out and doing select acquisitions and subdivisions while staying focused on the consumer goods division.
So we've touched a lot on the fact that we have an extensive IP portfolio, but the point here is, we're going to reiterate this a number of times, that our focus is on the consumer and ingredient supply section. I mean, on the ingredient supply business, Tom and I have a combined, I don't know, 50, I mean, most of it's you, but combined 50 plus years in the consumer space.
When I first met Alan, he couldn't even rent a car. That's how young he was when I first met him. And it was funny. I'm sorry. I'm going to digress here. He lands at LAX and he says, I got to get a special waiver to be able to rent a car because I'm only 23 years old.
20, yeah,
and then he
20.
comes to my office at Naked Juice and he sits down, he pulls out his computer and he starts building all these massive spreadsheets. He says, here's how we're going to fix this business. I said, no, that's not how we're going to fix it. I said, come on, get in the car. And I took him out to the grocery store, and I said, this is where the business happens at. And we spent the whole day.
We spent like 3 days going through the market from our manufacturing facilities, literally riding on trucks, unloading bottles of juice in coolers, teaching me how the business actually worked. I was a finance guy from Wall Street, right? I mean, I know everything.
At 23 years old.
23 years old. So that was a very humbling experience for me, but a very critical experience for me in my career and development. But point being here, this is our focus, and important for this group. We expect this to be the last time we'll do an investment round in the parent company. So the parent company is the IP holding company. This will be the last opportunity as an investor to get access to our full IP portfolio going forward. We'll do raises in specific subsidiaries for individual lines of IP as needed.
So these are the companies that we've all collectively worked for, and quite honestly, the company I love the most is not up there, and that was Fantasia. That was my first baby because it was a pretty quick run. Fantasia was a lot of fun. Our investors, we had about a 4.5x return on investment in 3.5 years at Fantasia. We had not quite the same at Naked Juice. You had a very successful exit at Elf, and then we took a business at Monster Energy that was losing money and sold it to Coke 4 years later for about $400 million.
So
we've had a little fun.
We've sold multiple businesses north of 20 times EBITDA multiples in our career.
CBD category, I mean, again, this is what we're talking about, folks, and how big is it going to be? Guy, you hear numbers between 18 and 22, 25 million. We don't know how big it's going to be, but here's what we do know.
Billion.
We know it's going to be big. Yeah, billions. We know it's going to be big. And I still, my wife, she gets mad at me because I pinch myself sometimes going, we have this IP that's very defensible. We just got to get out and start executing. We got to build the brand. We got to build the licensing piece. We got to get even Nielsen, because I still get a lot of Nielsen reports from my relationship with the brokerage firm. I got a report, and I think one of the guys in the room that sent it to me, but I got a report about 4 weeks ago from Nielsen. They've now put in place a senior VP of kind of cannabis that's monitoring what's happening in the cannabis world. And he said, regardless of what the FDA does, this year, CBD alone will be north of $2 billion. Regardless, if they block everything, it's still going to, you can go buy it right now in just about all the grocery stores.
The genie's out of the bottle.
Yeah,
the genie's out of the bottle, and they can't stop it.
There's no putting her back in.
That's correct.
Yeah.
So, when I was at Naked Juice, there was a guy there that was the chairman of the board. His name was Arthur Orshaw, and I used to be always talking about, how are we going to get out of this? How are we going to get out of this mess we're in? And he told me one time, he set me down, and 80 years old, and he said, Tom, focus on building a great company, and everything else will fall into play. Don't worry about, just focus day to day on building a great company. And that's when I sat down with Will. I said, we're going to build a great company. Part of building a great company is obviously building a great brand behind that company. So we're going to build a great brand. We're going to lead with technology and IP, which is what we've got with Wilson Cicini. We're going to extend brand penetration. And what I mean by extending brand penetration is, when you see a lot of people that are in this space, how many of them can get you into Walmart, get you into Kroger, can sit down and have a conversation with the CEO of Albertsons Safeway, can take you to Sprouts. As a matter of fact, we were the only CBD at the Sprouts Recent Innovation Summit because I know all the leaders there. And I have connectivity with the third largest food brokerage company in the world, where I'm also still a significant investor. So literally, once we get a brand built overnight, Scott Lewis, could we make this happen overnight? So, I mean, we've done it before so many times. So that's what I'm really pumped about, is getting that extra distribution out there. And then, in order to get the distribution and to build a great brand and build a great company, you got to drive world-class operations. And operations are what happens in the background. It's the manufacturing, it's the logistics, it's delivering to the consumer what they're looking for. So we really, and we learned this at Naked Juice. I mean, Naked Juice grew so fast. Once we fixed it, we had a business with 600 employees that was literally growing at 96% when we sold it to Pepsi. And we were running our manufacturing facility literally 7 days a week. But what we did before we rebranded is we fixed all the back end. We got everything ready to go, knowing that we were going to be able to support a high growth system. That's what we've done here. We have our capacity is not in question. We'll be a long time before we push capacity, and we're ready to rock and roll. And then the last thing is to continue to pursue strategic extensions, and I'll let Alan kind of talk a little bit about how we're going to do that.
So the first thing, I think that the most important thing for a consumer brand is to build a great brand. That's obviously critically important here. And high level, our roadmap is really focused on providing a seamless and personalized 360-degree journey for our consumers. That's really important. The key components of that are product, brand, social, digital, and IT. If we can execute against these 5 key areas, we're going to be very successful. And this is actually a roadmap that is very familiar to me. My last company called ELF Cosmetics, TBG-backed portfolio company.
That you took public.
So this was our brand roadmap that we used. That was a digitally native company, just like Ojai Energetics is. A lot of similarities there. And so we used that roadmap to create a very successful IPO at ELF Cosmetics, and we're gonna lean on similar strategies that we've learned from those experiences to build the brand at Ojai.
With our IP portfolio, we have the ability to buffer against that commodity play as gatekeepers to multiple product offerings, and also have been we're set up for great multitude of options on liquidity exits, where other companies are going to have 1 or 2 fighting to be Pepsi or Coke.
So I've already mentioned we're working with some of the biggest beverage and food companies, in America. 15 different beverage companies are either under our R&D process right now or have completed it. I'm working also with, we have as one of our advisors, a guy by the name of Michael Levine. And Michael Levine has been a headhunter in the consumer products industry for 35 years, 40 years. You can imagine what his Rolodex is like. So Michael and I are on the phone every Monday because we keep going to all these different companies where Michael has placed people over the last 40 years. I mean, he's got people in the highest levels of multiple consumer products companies nationwide. So, yeah, we're working with 15 now. I hope that by this time next year we're working with 200. That would be the plan. Because again, this licensing piece is going to be, they're trying to be price driven, but to Will's point, because of our IP, we're holding our price. We're the highest priced emulsion in the marketplace right now. In some instances, we're twice as much as one of the other guys. And we've had beverage companies call us and say, "Can you drop your price?" And we're not, right? So because our stuff works and other stuff doesn't work. We had a guy the other day told us he had to throw away 1 million cans. And
as Wilson Sonsini executes its IP enforcement strategy, which they've done. They took down Monsanto, took down Pfizer. Pfizer now begged them to represent them. They represent Pfizer, Merck. We know everyone who's violating our art, and we will have a very swift and strong defense upon that when they deem it they're running it. So.
Yeah, so the licensing piece is to me, that's fun because it's a little easier. It's not a lot of heavy lifting. On the branded side, that's the part where we build out. I mean, right now you can see what we have over here. We have a tincture and we have a sports gel. We need to build out a complete portfolio of Ojai Energetics brand using our technology across multiple platforms like gummies, and what a lot of the other people are doing, but do it better. And then again, once we get that done, we can then take that to the retailer and have a great presence on the shelf. I mean, we can do topicals, right? And that's what we're going to start on immediately is doing the topicals, doing the bath salts, the bath bombs, getting into the health and wellness sections of Whole Foods, of Sprouts, of grocery stores initially, because we can do that right now.
And the nice thing about our company, we're a digitally native brand, born online. E-commerce is our number one channel today. We can utilize this is again a strategy we've used in other businesses. Is we can go out and develop a full line of products. And if you're going to go present that to Walmart, now you've got a ton of inventory that you're exposed for. If you're going to go roll out to a Walmart or a Target, we don't need to do that. We're going to test everything on our own e-commerce site. We're going to get feedback from the consumers. We're going to tweak it. We're going to change it. Only things that win online are going to graduate to retail. Tom's going to get handed a portfolio of products that we know the consumer wants. It's been tested by them and proven.
Already have
and
data behind it.
he's going to now have a portfolio to go sell to retail.
And then drive consumers in that region with using full suite of tech to drive velocity once we push to brick and mortar. We've been an industry leader in a multitude of ways, but we were the first company to do third-party batch testing per batch and have the ability for the consumer to look and see exactly what they're putting in their body every single time back in 2014. We're happy that others have joined that. We still think there's a lot more to go. We test for heavy metals, VOCs, microbes, pesticides, herbicides, cannabinoids, and terpenes per batch through that process. Additionally, we've got more technology to deploy utilizing blockchain and really continue to lead the way in consumer and QC with top Six Sigma operators and continuing to set the bar.
Great. And then our fifth pillar, we've touched on this a lot, but pursuing strategic extensions. While we're explicitly focused on building our consumer and ingredient supply part of the house, we do have a wheel and spoke model, as we've talked about. So we're going to look to how do we commercialize or monetize these other lines of IP selectively that we've discussed through various ways, through partnerships or outright sales or licenses.
Yeah, and I don't know if we've mentioned this or not, but our product's also organic. So we're one of the only, if not the only, organic water-soluble emulsion that's in the marketplace right now. And companies like, I'll just throw one out there. I don't know if you ever heard of Brew Doctor Kombucha, but they came to us because we were the only ones they could find that was organic, and we're actually working very closely with them right now. The only reason I throw this slide up is to show you the difference between us and maybe some of the household names you're familiar with, Charlotte's Web, Green Roads, et cetera, Medterra. What's important up here is the three things that we do that they don't, or what makes us. It's water soluble, it's bioavailability, and it's immediate uptake. Those are the three things that we do that nobody else can do, and those are the three most important.
And so here we've got some summary financial forecast. Note that this is, again, just as it relates to our consumer and ingredient supply side of the house. From 2018 to 2019, the company grew from $1 million to north of $3 million, and I can't overstate the fact that that was done with no marketing, no product development, no optimization, literally nothing to drive that brand. And we're able to do that sort of cash flow neutral in a year that we needed to do that. And the business was driven that way organically through word of mouth. We have an amazing raving fan culture with our consumers that buy our products religiously online and drive our volumes through word of mouth.
So the majority of people, right, when you look at the actual science of dosage needed to have a bioactive effect in the body of CBD, we're talking 250 milligrams minimum fat soluble or equivalent. Most data kicks in around 500 milligrams. The majority of consumers have never taken anywhere near that much. So what a lot of people are seeing is placebo, which is really great. It pales in comparison to actual dosage efficacy. And if they're taking a full spectrum product, the trace amounts of THC are going to convert into a form that does have a substantial bioactivity at low amounts and will have an anti-inflammatory effect What's unique with our delivery system is we're actually able to deliver an effective dose affordably, which the user feels the first time. We can, and because of that, when you actually have a real response and it's changed your life, you're going to share that with friends and family, and that's what we've seen is this organic friends and family, or raving fans, and now we brought the blue chip operators to pour the gas on it and take it to Bright.
So if you step back and you look at the consumer space, look at sort of relevant M&A comps. Typically, what you'll find in sort of these types of consumer businesses, M&A comps are in the 12 to 14 times EBITDA range, much higher than that from a public comp perspective. In 5 years, we would expect our consumer business to be generating north of $50 million of EBITDA. That gets you to a $700 to $800 million valuation using those rough multiples. But if you take it a step further and dig in a little deeper and look at consumer brands that are plant-centric and IP-focused. Look at a company like Beyond Meat, a great example.
Who we know very well.
They're a fantastic company, love what they've done.
Know most of the leaders there.
And so about a year ago, they IPO'd. They were doing around $90 million in revenue, losing a bunch of money because they were obviously investing in their technologies, but losing negative EBITDA. They IPO'd at a valuation of about $1.5 billion and immediately traded up 3x the day they went public. Fast forward a year to where we are today, they're doing north of $230 million, roughly break even from their last filing. And are trading with a market cap north of $7.5 billion. Shows you the power of the consumer space when you're looking at plant-based, which is one aspect of it, but also looking at a company that has defensible IP and the value that the market puts on top of that. So see a lot of similarities in terms of our focus and their focus. And then we also have the ability to layer on top of that. We're not just a consumer company. We have all this robust IP portfolio that we can monetize over time in a number of different ways to again add even more value for shareholders, which is what we're really exceptionally excited for.
We'll set Ojai up as a public benefit corp. So, which is really cool, right? So let me tell you what he did. And this was before Al and I got there. And like a traditional early stage company, everybody's involved, right? Because I saw Brian, your wife's running around here somewhere. I saw her setting up stuff. So my wife, I got my wife, I said, hey, we need a little help on the customer service side. We're getting just inundated with emails, and we need help. My wife said, oh, okay, all right. So she jumps in and starts helping. And literally every day she comes, and I make her work upstairs, so we're not that close because I'm working in the house too.
My wife does not work for the company.
Yeah. But she'll literally come down, every day and say, look at this email that I just got from this person that's been taking our product. And she's reduced her pain medication by half, and it's saving her money because she's not buying it. And then here's the really cool thing that Will did. CBD is available to everybody. So he is on our website. There's the affordable CBD program that Will said. We had a lady that wrote us and she said, I'm paying a ton of money for my cancer medication. I really can't afford to pay $60 or $70 a bottle for your product. And Will wrote her back and said, what can you pay? And she said $10. And he said, so she pays $10 a bottle, which is below our cost. But
Very cool.
it's doing the right thing.
Very cool.
It's about doing the right thing, and that's what makes it so much fun. To think about what we're about to do and what we can do with this plant and the health benefits behind it, it really excites me.
Yeah, us too. Everybody, I want to thank you for being here. You're welcome to
Thank
stay
you.
in Meagle. Great night. Very much. Thank you. Good job, guys.
Thank you.